Welcome back to the Badass Literature Society, where badasses come together to rate and review novels recommended by you. I'm Michael.
I'm Barbara.
And I'm Lauren.
We're back for another bonus episode, and this time we're talking about the Hogfather TV film / miniseries that aired on BBC, since we just read the book a couple months ago. We're going to talk about the film itself and what we thought of it, how it compares to the book, how they portray the characters in the movie, and then some other stuff as well. Now here's Barbara to talk about some of the details of the movie.
Okay, so this miniseries / TV film came out in 2006. It was written and directed by Vadim Jean. Once again, no idea if I'm pronouncing that correctly. It is 3 hours and 9 minutes long, but I believe, depending on where you watched it, it was divided into either 2 or 3 parts. It does currently have a 7.5 out of 10 on IMDb. And like Michael said, it did originally air on BBC. And it stars David Jason, Mark Warren, Michelle Dockery, and Ian Richardson's voice.
Perfect. So, like you guys always like to make fun of me for, let's dive in. What did you guys think about the Hogfather TV series or miniseries / movie? And I'm going to let Lauren start this one.
I liked it. I thought that it was well cast. Some of the characters were different than what I had imagined, but some of them were like spot on. I thought that the world building was really reflected in it, and it was cool to get to see what they kind of interpreted and did with it. I think film adaptations, or in this case, TV adaptations, are always interesting to see how they kind of take the book and run with it creatively. So I thought that they did some cool things with that.
And Barbara, what did you think?
I liked it too. I always find it difficult to compare book adaptations to the movie counterparts because I feel like it's never fair for the movie. Just because I feel like 90% of the time, and 90% of the people are going to always prefer the books over the movie / TV series, whatever you want to call this. Just because. Well, I'd say more movies, just because there's a limited time that you have to fit all of this, what is world building and character building, into roughly like an hour to 2 hour movie. Luckily, this one had 3 hours to do it with, so it had more time than most movies. So for sure, I would consider this more of like a TV or mini series because of that. But I think what they had to work with, I think they did a good job. The overall story and plot are still there. Same with most of the characters, at least the important ones to the story and plot. Obviously, it's kind of hard to compare like what's it called? The graphics. What is that called?
Like the visual effects.
The visual effects. Gosh, my mind is just blooped. The visual effects from 2006. I think that's kind of was the part that I wasn't a huge fan of, but once again, kind of hard because it's been a while, and obviously the graphics in older movies don't age well, and I'm sure they had a smaller budget than most of these like high-end movies that back then that would have aged better. But overall, I thought it was an enjoyable watch. I enjoyed it and stuff. So.
And I also really liked it. I thought that the way that it, as far as like comparing it to the book, like is it a faithful adaptation? I thought the beginning of it, truthfully, was like almost like word for word, it seemed, to parts of the book. And I got excited because I thought maybe the whole thing would be that way. And I know it's impossible to do that, but it was cool that how close they kept it to the book. At least I thought how close they kept it to the book. Obviously, there were some characters that were a little bit different. They weren't portrayed the way I thought I imagined them, I guess, in the book. But the overall story was still there. I thought it was really entertaining to watch. I definitely would recommend watching it in at least 2 sittings. I think Barbara and I, didn't we watch it in 2 sittings, Barbara? Half and half?
Yes, we did in 2.
Yeah. I think that's a good way to do it. I mean, that's obviously the way it was intended to be watched in 2 or 3 chunks when it was on TV the first time. But I thought though it was really well cast. They all did a great job. Ian Richardson was phenomenal as the voice of Death. The visual effects, some of them were a little dated. I do actually like how they did Death because I think that they did like his. I don't know if it's a costume or a puppet or exactly how they did it, to be honest. But I think that it was intentionally a little bit campy because the book is a little bit campy. And I thought that was kind of cool. And it was, the comedy and the tongue in cheek and the dry humor from the book came over to the movie well. And overall, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a good movie slash TV film slash miniseries. So now that we know our general thoughts, what would you guys give this for a rating out of 10? Barbara, what would you give it?
7.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Lauren?
6.85. It wasn't quite good enough to make 7.
You guys and your decimals. I would give it a 7 out of 10 also. So between those 3 ratings, that throws our group score at a 6.95, which I'm sure makes Lauren happy because it's not quite a 7.
You can hear Michael's blood boiling.
Yeah.
So yeah, 6.95, almost a 7, which is a pretty good score. It's a little less than where IMDb places it, but pretty close. So the next question, just like we do on our book podcast, guys, would you recommend this TV film slash miniseries? I'm going to let Barbara go first on this one.
I think if you're just watching this movie for poos and giggles, like I feel like you might be a little lost if you haven't read the book. But I mean, it does kind of stand on its own since it's kind of its own story, that doesn't kind of attach itself to anything else. If you like Christmas movies, it's one of those that you can definitely watch for Christmas. Yeah, I mean, I would recommend it. Maybe even if you haven't read any of his books, this might, have you want to go and pick up the book or some of his other books and stuff like that. So yeah, I think it's good enough to watch. I'm not a huge Christmas movie fan. But this, I didn't feel like it was that stereotypical Christmas movie, so I would definitely rewatch this again for Christmas cheer and stuff instead of your stereotypical Christmas movies. So yeah.
So I would also recommend it. I think at least to most people. I mean, if you've ever read any of Terry Pratchett's books, you'd like it. If you've read this book, you're going to like it. It's not a stereotypical Christmas movie, so I liked that about it as well. Unlike Barbara, I do like the regular Christmas movies, but I think this is a good one to watch too. And I think that really, I think anybody could enjoy it if they're watching it around the holidays. It's not so far out there that it couldn't be enjoyed by most. So I would definitely recommend it. Lauren?
I feel like I probably would not recommend it just to your average Joe. Mainly because I feel like if they haven't read any of Terry Pratchett's work, it would be really confusing, kind of like Barbara said. And I think they'd probably just think it was dumb, and a lot of it would kind of, like, they wouldn't appreciate it the same as if they had read the book. I mean, it'd just be kind of weird. I think that they did a good job because considering the way that he writes is very, like, does a lot of narrating and footnotes and stuff, and that's hard to transform into a movie, taking that sort of thing. So I feel like they did a good job for the most part with that. So I would recommend people who have read the book or other of Terry Pratchett's work. I feel like they would have an appreciation for it. But I feel like just like my average coworker, I'm not going to be like, hey, here's a good movie for you and your hubs to watch over the weekend. Like,
so I'm going to throw in a surprise question that I just thought of. When we talked about this book, one of the questions that we asked was, who was your favorite character? And I'm curious who you guys' favorite character was in the TV movie / miniseries.
Still Susan.
Fair enough. Same with you, Barbara?
I still really like Susan. And Death, of course.
That's funny. So yeah, I was going to say Death, which he was mine for the book. So that didn't change, which I didn't think it would, but I was just curious if you guys had different opinions.
I also really liked Teotemi or Tea Time or whatever the hell you want to call him in the film or the TV adaptation, because I think they cast him really well, and he was just, I don't know, he was enjoyable. Every scene that he was in, I enjoyed watching his I can't even think of the word, shenanigans.
Yeah, I agree. I think the guy that they cast, Mark Warren, to play Tea Time or Tia Tima, or I think Barbara has it the pronunciation down. What was the pronunciation?
Oh man, I don't remember anymore.
It was Teotemi or something.
Yeah.
But I thought he did a really good job playing that role. He didn't look exactly like I imagined
We're
him reading
we're
the
not
book.
at we're not on that one just
I
quite
know.
yet.
I know. All right, I'll
So,
shut up. We'll get there.
so if you're gonna like, go off on left field and on a tangent here, you might want to stop.
Fair enough. Excuse me. So let's talk about first, before I go off into left field, on about the differences and similarities. What was different in the book? What was the same? What was better? Was there anything that was worse?
So I feel like for the movie, and I'm not sure because I'm not a movie expert. I would never consider myself a movie expert. I mean, I watch movies, but I don't know. But I would say the difference that I noticed and the huge that kind of irked me a little bit about the movie was that the movie pretty much just there was no mystery about it, like how in the book where you don't really quite know what's going on, like who the people are really the bad guys and like what Tea Time is planning. Whereas in the movie, it's pretty obvious from the get-go. Like you kind of see scenes with him early on in the movie, what he's planning. And same with what Death has planned with Susan. He pretty much tells her like, "Hey, I can't get involved, but you can, so this is why I'm getting, you involved in this whole shenanigan and all that stuff." So I wasn't a huge fan of that just because I feel like moviegoers aren't stupid. Don't treat people that like that. Like I feel like they could have done it just like how in the book where you could have done a who done it and why and still kind of kept it interesting. Whereas this, I feel like they just kind of was like, here, there's no mystery behind it. And I enjoy that of the book. Um, Besides that, a few things were a little out of order on how they kind of went about things. And obviously they took out parts, which I find ironic because from the book I was like, yeah, they had some like random parts that weren't really needed, that didn't really do much for the story, and they didn't include that in the movie. And I found myself be like, oh man, I kind of missed that because it would have been funny to see that. So I find that ironic now. I'm eating my words.
That is funny because I was about to ask if you felt vindicated because the
Yeah.
director like cut it out of the movie. Like, ah, I was right. It wasn't necessary.
Yeah, it's funny. Yeah, I feel silly now saying that. It would have been funny to see. I feel like maybe it was more of a visual thing than a book thing, but here we are. Um, what else? I mean, they kept a lot. Like it was. I feel like it was a good adaptation. Like the overall story was still there. Um, Visually, I didn't think anything was too different from the book and stuff like that they described. I honestly think that would be overall just like my biggest complaint was just that on how they did that. Besides that, I feel like they included what needed to be included in the movie. I wanted more Death Rat, the Rat of Death. He was like barely in it, so that made me sad because I really liked him in the book, and I wanted more of him in the book anyway. So I feel like they gave more of the Quoth, the Raven, more scenes without the rat. So that was a little sad, but yeah,
Oh, God of Hangovers was in there.
True,
yeah,
he made the cut. I knew Barbara was going to bring up the rat. That was definitely a bummer. I gave her a hard time for how much she likes that character in the book, but I feel like, kind of like you were saying, Barbara, like that would have been a really cool character to bring over to the screen, like to see that. and it was kind of disappointing, like you said, that they didn't do that.
Do you think it was because they didn't have a CGI budget back then?
Maybe.
Probably they probably wanted to focus on important CGI stuff versus just a little rat.
Right.
So for me, the only thing I really I noticed while we were watching it, and it was something Barbara and I talked about as we were watching it, was just that it's like, wait, hold on, this didn't happen at this time, or this is out of order. And I think for movies, whenever they make an adaptation from a book, they kind of have to do that because the story, the way it's told in the book, doesn't always flow as well in a visual medium. So it happens, but that was one of the things that I noticed. The only truly, other than the death, was it Death of Rats? What is that his name?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Other than him really not being included
The
much.
Grim Squeaker, perhaps?
Grim Squeaker, yes. Although I did think it was funny as a side note that Michelle Dockery, who played Susan, also played the Grim Squeaker. So the squeaking in the movie was done by her, which I didn't know until I started taking notes for this podcast. So, anyway, the other thing that I don't really say I was disappointed by it because I knew it wasn't going to be there, but Terry Pratchett's narration in the book was one of the best parts of the book. And they tried to do that in the movie to some extent by having Death be the narrator for certain scenes throughout the movie. But it just wasn't the same. And I think that's one of those things that you just miss out on when you go from book to movie is you don't get the narration, you don't get the the thoughts that we get to read as the reader that are taking place inside characters' heads, and it's hard to portray that on the screen.
I feel like a lot of the humor was lost too.
Yeah, I have to agree with you on that because it was like the author's side notes or comments that were kind of really, really funny and sometimes character moments, but the movie, that's hard to do in a movie, so obviously it didn't come across as well.
Yeah, 100% agree with you guys there. The comedy and stuff. I mean, I thought what did come over crossed over well, but they definitely left a lot of it in the book, which is disappointing. But
like I said, it's hard. It's hard to compare. It's just hard to compare a book with a movie.
I do want to focus on this though, because I don't think either Barbara or I talked about it. So I'm curious, Barbara and Lauren, if you thought there was anything in the movie that they had that was better than it was in the book.
I'm not a good person to ask for that because I always pick the book.
But the one thing, I guess I'll answer my own question first while you guys think about it a little bit. But the one thing that jumps out at me is the scene in the movie that takes place at the shopping mall where Death is, granting all those kids' wishes. I thought that was really well done in the book, so don't get me wrong there. But the way that they translated that to the screen and extended the scene a little bit on the screen, I thought they did a really good job portraying that. Even better than Terry did in the book originally. So that's the one thing that jumped out at me that I think the movie improved on.
I would say probably pacing was what they did well, which is how sometimes I feel like books suffer more than movies do. Well, not all the time. There's really boring movies out there, but and I think that's why the book or the movie had to change things around for the pacing purposes, just so it flowed better. I feel like the movie flowed better. It was more connected because you kind of would see what was going on in one scene and not have to wait so long to get a different character's perspective. Like the book kind of had that happen. As far as actual scenes, oof, man, I don't know if the movie did anything better.
One thing you mentioned earlier that you liked was that they expanded Quoth's role, the Raven.
Yeah,
so that'd be one thing, I guess, because I feel like he was in the book less than the movie, but obviously we missed out on the Grim Squeaker, so it's a give and take there.
I don't know. He was in the book plenty and stuff like that. So,
Lauren, do you have anything to add there?
No, I think I would agree with you. I did enjoy how they extended the scene where Death is Santa. Sorry, Hogfather. Out the gifts to the children. That I think it was well done. Just with the parents, dramatic. having a sword and all the other things that he was giving people, and then the store clerk being like, you can't just give away stuff. Like, I think that that added some of the humor that I was otherwise missing.
And now for a short ad from one of our friends.
Hi, I'm Bethany Finger, the host of Prince Kai Fan Pod, a Marissa Meyer Book Club podcast. Join me every week during my read-along journey through all of the books by author Marissa Meyer, one chapter at a time, spoiler-free. Each episode will feature a different guest, new fan art, and laughter and joy through reading. You can find Prince Kai Fan Pod on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and all other listening platforms. And now, back to the show.
So the last question I want to talk about today is how you guys think the characters were portrayed. So how did the actors they casted these roles portray the characters from the book? Were they just like you imagined they would be? Were they different? Was that a good thing? Was that a bad thing? And I'll let Barbara go first here.
See here. So the biggest, the one that I pictured quite differently would have been good old Tietam. Because the book kind of described him like, I don't know how you pronounce this, a cherub. Is that right?
Cherub, that's correct, yeah.
Okay. So I kind of pictured more of like angelic looking, like he was good looking except for like that one creepy eye, but everything else about him was like really good looking, but you knew something was off about him, if that makes sense. You know, like a Ted Bundy type thing, like people were obsessed with him, women loved him for some weird ass reason and thought he was attractive, but like there's some weird feeling in you that you're like, ooh, he's kind of creepy. So I pictured him more like that, like a cherub, like good looking. And for some reason, and let me know if I'm wrong, but I thought he only had one creepy eye, not two creepy eyes. Is that right?
That is right. Yeah, in the book he only had the one creepy eye and his other eye was normal.
Right. So I feel like the movie just wanted to make him look creepier and stuff like that. And the actor did an amazing job of acting like a crazy lunatic person. Like that was, but like physically that's not what I was picturing. I loved Susan Michelle Dockery's portrayal of Susan. That's how I kind of imagined Susan, maybe a little bit shorter, but I don't really know how tall Michelle is. Maybe the other actors compared to her were short, the men were. I'm not really sure, but I pictured a little bit more petite. But everyone else I really liked. Maybe Death a little bit taller too, and maybe creepier, because like Michael kind of mentioned he was campy looking, but I think like you said that was intentional. So I think everyone else was pretty spot on. I mean, like the wizard, I kind of picture some of them a little bit younger. Like I picked, for some reason I thought like it was a wide range of wizards in their age group. I didn't think they were all older, like much older. Yeah,
I did too. I was like, these wizards are ancient. Like,
right. Because it's like a school, and I know obviously most of these were professors and stuff, so I, thought they were older, but like literally everyone in that school, even like the background characters all seem to be old, and I'm like, okay, where's the students? But and obviously the rat of death rat, the grim squeaker, was perfect in every way in how I pictured him. I just wish he had more squishy.
I pictured Death differently too with Barbara. Like, I get that he was supposed to be maybe a little campy, but I definitely did not picture him looking like he picked up a mask at the Halloween store.
Right. Like, I feel like I wouldn't be so scared of him if he just walked up and was like, hey, it's death time.
Right.
So I agree with most of what Barbara said. I thought Mark Warren did a fantastic job playing the role of Tama, or whatever, however it's said. But the way they made him look, like Barbara said, I think they made him look creepy on purpose. I didn't picture him that way. It was fine for the movie. I mean, I it didn't make me hate it or anything, but it was different and not the way I pictured him. That was a little bit of a change. Michelle Dockery was almost exactly what I pictured for Susan, so that was kind of funny. Um, Death, as far as the voice acting, Ian Richardson knocked it out of the park too. He the voicing and everything was pretty close to how I was reading Death in my mind. The way they portrayed him visually, I mean, I kind of pictured him looking campy because that's how I took him to be in the book. Like Lauren said, though, the the whole, I mean, it just looked like they didn't. They could have done a little better. Like it looks like his mask at times did look like it was something he just picked up at like a Halloween shop. Um, the other one that Barbara didn't mention that I wanted to make sure I mentioned was David Jason's Albert. I thought he did great. He really did a great job bringing Albert to life. I thought on the screen. I loved that character in the book, and I thought it was really well done on the screen as well.
Did you picture Albert as like a normal sized human? I kind of pictured him a little bit smaller, like gnomish size. Was that weird?
No, I didn't picture him. I guess I wouldn't say I pictured him gnomish, but I pictured him. I did picture him smaller than like a regular sized person. So that was a little bit different. I mean, he's a shorter regular sized person because the actor is, but he was bigger than I thought. I guess I was kind of thought of him elf size almost, since that's kind of the role he was playing. Maybe that's why I thought that. I don't know.
He wasn't an elf.
He was. Well, I mean, he was kind of like.
He was pretending to be.
He was pretending to be an elf, right? So because of that, I envisioned him being more that size, smaller.
I don't know. I just pictured Death to be like 12-foot tall, like real tall for some reason, and like the puppet. I don't know. The puppet was tall, but I feel like it should have been taller personally.
I mean, now I'm picturing him gnomish.
Lauren, did you have anything to add about the portrayal of the characters?
I mean, other than just Death being not creepy at all, Susan was spot on for me too. I enjoyed her a lot. I did also think that she would be a little bit more petite. I don't know, just in general. That doesn't really matter. She's a badass either way. I think that they, like I said originally, I think they did a good job casting.
Fair enough. The one other thing I wanted to mention that I forgot was I thought it was cool that they brought Terry Pratchett in for a cameo too. I know Barbara knows this because I talked to her about it when we were watching it, but I don't know if Lauren does. The toy maker at the very end of the movie that Death visits when he goes back in time to try to correct that sadness from Albert's past. That is Terry Pratchett. He played the toy maker.
Oh, nice.
So that was cool. One last thing I also wanted to talk about, an additional question again, are the way that they did the props, the settings, the costumes. How did you guys think they did with that? Did you like the way that they did it? Did they build the world that you imagined? What were your thoughts on that? And I'll let Barbara go first on that one too.
So most of the setting and the props and stuff like that, I didn't have an issue with. The clothes, I thought they did really well, except for maybe Death once again. But I mean, his Hogfather costume was okay. But like when he was in his normal gear, once again, I pictured someone a little more creepier looking because it's Death, and that's what you picture. But once again, I think we've all decided it was intentional how they portrayed him. But as far as like the Tooth Fairy Kingdom, like I was really disappointed in that. I pictured something completely different, more maze-like from the book, and with a bunch of stairs, not like one staircase, but a bunch of different staircases. And the stairs being a little bit differently. And then I feel like the teeth in itself was kind of bad. Like it did not look like normal teeth. Like that's not what teeth looks like. So I was a little disappointed in the Tooth Fairy Kingdom. The Hogfather Kingdom was done as well as 2006 CGI could be, I feel like, done. The ice and stuff like that was kind of cool up until it started falling apart, and then the CGI kind of broke down a little for me. But like where Susan's, like that house and stuff like that with the little kids that Susan was taking care of, I thought it was really cool. Like everything else, but I think that the most disappointing part for me was the the Tooth Fairy Kingdom. It wasn't what I pictured it at all or imagined. And I don't remember there being Tooth Fairy guards either. Was that just a movieism?
I thought there were guards in the book as well. At least I remember there being guards in the book as well, but that may have just been a movieism that I'm carrying
Hmm.
over on accident. I don't know.
Okay. I did like the guards' little tooth helmets. I thought that was a nice touch. It kind of
That
made me
was.
giggle. Um, so yeah, I mean, I thought Susan's costume was on point, man. I really enjoyed her costume. I think they did a really good job on her costume and even her hair and stuff like that. I do want to mention Death's costume as the Hogfather's because like it was exactly how I pictured him, like stuffing a little pillow in his belly to pretend that he was fat and like a really
Yeah.
piss poor like beard to like pretend that he has a little beard and stuff like that. Like it literally looked like a costume that someone would try to like make themselves and try to hastily put on. And like I thought that was done really well for him. And then I don't know, Tea Time was just creepy, so like his costume was fine. Um, so
I thought costume wise they did pretty good. Obviously I've seen better costumes, but for what they did, being a TV movie and being 2006, I thought they did a pretty good job. My big disappointment setting is the same as Barbara's, and I recognize that the Tooth Fairy Kingdom was never going to look as cool as it did in my head because this was a TV movie from 2006. Um, but I think they could have done a better job than they did. Um, that was the only moment where, aside from the dated visual effects, that was the only moment that really kind of pulled me out of it because it just didn't. Not only did it not look like what I visualized, but it looked fake. Like it didn't look like they were really there. It felt like a set, which I know it was one, but you know what I mean? Like it felt like a set instead of looking like what it was supposed to look like. Does that make sense?
yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
So I also liked the tooth helmets though. That was a nice touch. That was pretty entertaining.
It didn't look like teeth, though.
Mm-mm.
No, no,
I don't
they
know what kind of mouths they're getting those out of. But
It was like perfectly white teeth, but teeth don't look like that whatsoever. It really bothered me.
Other than that setting, though, I thought they did a pretty good job with the other stuff. Obviously, like Barbara said, and like I've said before, the visual effects were dated, but you expect that when you're watching a movie that it's almost 15 years old now, and so that's understandable. The rest of it, though, I mean, the way they did the characters, I thought was cool. The way they did Death, I think, was intentionally campy based on the other CGI effects in the movie. They could have made him CGI, and they chose not to on purpose. But the other settings I thought were done well. The Death's house, some of the effects there were a little bit, again, just dated. I feel like it's hard to talk about that stuff objectively because, like, if we had watched this in 2006, would we be talking about the visual effects?
Mhm.
It's one of those things. Like, and I don't know. Maybe we would have. Maybe we would have been like, God, this is so bad. But I'd like to think that maybe we wouldn't have been as critical in 2006 since it wasn't, we weren't used to what we're used to now. But yeah, that's my thoughts on that stuff. Oh, and the props outside of the tooth. Come on, Michael. The props outside of that I thought were well done. Whoever was in charge of the costumes and the props did a really good job. Lauren,
what am I talking about now?
we're talking about the props and the costumes and the settings and the sets.
Thought I already talked about the settings. No, maybe I talked in my head. No, I thought that I guess I talked earlier about the world building and that I thought that they did a good job of transferring like the setting that he created and the world that he created into the movie. I thought that it was really interesting. I think it was like in the very opening where they show like the whole thing floating on the turtle's back or whatever. Did you guys see that part?
Yes.
Yeah.
Like the Discworld or whatever. So I thought that was cool because that was something that I liked getting to see come to the screen. I think that the costuming was all done really well. Like Michael mentioned, and like all of us said earlier, I think that Susan was really, she was exactly like kind of what I pictured in my head. And as we've said a million times, I think that Death could have gotten a better mask from the Halloween store, but I think it was intentional. His costuming, and I loved that just the intentionality with everything, how things were chosen, and it was all really reflective of like Cratchit's kind of style.
Oh, Michael, you forgot to mention the what do they call it? It was like their version of a computer, but it wasn't a computer. It was like this massive machine with like ants and
Oh,
crap.
yes.
What
Thank you
was
for
that
reminding
called?
me. I don't remember what that was called. I know exactly what you're talking about. And I even said when we were watching it, I wanted to talk about
Yeah,
that. Thank you for
it had
reminding
a
me.
it had an actual name, but I can't remember now.
So I'm gonna call it the wizard computer. Uh, it's called the Hex. I just looked it up. It's
Yes.
called Hex. The way that they portrayed that in the movie was so cool. They built this practical machine. It was pretty much exactly how I visualized it, maybe even better than the way I visualized it in the book. Thank you again, Barbara, for reminding me about that.
Yeah.
I really liked how they portrayed that. I thought that was really, really cool. And I think I said that like 3 times while we were watching it, so that's why Barbara
Mhm.
remembers it. But
Well, it's funny because now I remember like that would probably be the best thing they did in movie wise versus the book because while reading it, I could not for the life of me like picture this machine. Like I was having a really hard time just picturing it in my head, and I think the movie did a really good job of like showing me what it's supposed to have looked like and what it looked like, and I thought it was really neat. So
yeah, it was really cool the way they built it. And it looked like it was practical. Now, it may not have been. They might have done visual effects, but it looked like they'd built like this actual practical machine. So,
yeah.
do you have anything to add on that, Lauren? The hex?
No, I mean, I thought of you.
Fair enough. As an IT guy, I guess I enjoy the even fantasy computers. So guys, that's it. That's the end of our second bonus episode. Thank you so much for listening. We are Badass Literature Society. Hope you liked this episode. If you did, let us know. Leave us a rating or review on Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you've got an idea or something else that you'd like us to talk about besides our normal book reviews and these bonus episodes, let us know on Instagram. Send us a message. Leave us a comment. Same on Facebook. Send us a message. Leave us a comment. Let us know. We're looking for more ideas for these, so we'd love to hear what you guys think. Our handle in both places is at Badass Lit Pod. And we'll see you guys next time. I'm Michael.
And Barbara.
I'm Lauren.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye, 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 bye.